I'm weirdly apprehensive about this Parsha podcast. Yes, I'm in the cozy confines of the Torch Center in Houston, Texas, in the trusty studios. And it's year 9 of the Parsha podcast. We've done several hundred episodes already. You would think I know what I'm doing here. Yes, it's been 9 years. The first year of the Parsha podcast, I recorded it live with my Sunday morning class. If you listen to it now, you can still hear the sounds, the ambient noise in the background. But then for 7 years, I recorded it in a studio environment. Just me and a microphone. And that takes some time getting used to. It's sort of a really awkward activity if you've never done it before. But for year 9, we decided to record it every Tuesday night live on torchzoom.com. So this whole year, I have been recording the Parsha podcast from the Torch Center in Houston, Texas, but with some friends who joined on torchzoom.com. And we did it every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Central. But this week, Tuesday night was Shavuos. So I made an announcement last week. Okay, next week, we're not going to have torchzoom.com. It's Shavuos. I'll record it myself. So this week, it's back to just me and the microphone, and I'm sitting here, and I'm in the Torch Center. I've been here all afternoon, and I'm just procrastinating. I'm delaying it. I'm weirdly apprehensive. It's weird to be back just me and the microphone. And the funny thing is, when we started Parsha Podcast Live on Torch Zoom, the first couple of weeks, it was an adjustment as well. It shows you how you can get used to things, and then sometimes it's hard to go back to maybe what was your comfort area previously. But we had Shavuos. Shavuos was lovely. For the first time in many years, I stayed up the whole night as is customary. But for the first time in many years, I was just studying Talmud with my study partner. Every year, I would give a class or multiple classes even. But this year, there were so many people who were teaching and speaking. I didn't think that I was needed to speak, so I went back to the halcyon days of trying to study advanced Talmud for hours and hours, and I have to say it was a blast. It was really enjoyable, and I'm still trying to get my circadian rhythm restored. It's an altered circadian rhythm. It's in a studio environment in the Torch Center. This is the Parsha podcast, so let's begin. It's Parshas Nasso, the longest Parsha in the Torah by verses. It has the most verses of any Parsha. It has the most commentary in the Midrash, in the Zohar, and it's a common saying that Parshas Nasso always falls out the week after Shavuos, the week after the festival that marks the receiving of the Torah. So everyone's craving some Torah. So we have the longest Parsha and the most commentary in the Zohar and in the Midrash, and it is a dandy, as they all are. It begins with the wrapping up of the count of the Levites. Last week we had the family of Kahas. The working age Levites were counted and were given their tasks. This week, it begins with the families of Gershon and Merari. And then we read about the cleaning out of the camp. People who are impure must be banished. Every person must be, every degree of impurity has the degree of expelling or the degree of camps that they're expelled from. We have some laws of theft. We have the laws of the sota, the suspected adulteress. And then we have the Nazir, someone who makes a voluntary oath to refrain from wine and grape products and derivatives, and not to cut their hair, and not to come to contact with the dead, to be like a high priest. This was done typically for 30 days. They live as an ascetic, as a holy person, as someone who wants to eschew physicality and physical pleasures, and to focus instead on the spiritual. That's the laws of the Nazir. Briefly, we have the priestly blessings, and the Parsha ends with the gifts of the princes to mark the inauguration of the tabernacle. Now, if you have the sense that we've talked about the tabernacle's inauguration already, you would be correct. In fact, the inauguration of the tabernacle happened on the first day of Nisan, and there are 4 parshas that talk about this day. Parshas Pekudei from the book of Exodus. tells of the events of the first day of Nisan. It's exactly 2 weeks shy of a year following the Exodus. Parshas Pekudei, Parshas Shemini, and Acharemos in the book of Leviticus, and now Parshas Nasso in the book of Numbers, in the book of Bamidbar. It tells of the events of the inauguration and the gifts, the tributes that were brought by the heads of the tribes, by the princes. So they brought actually multiple rounds of tributes. First was the gift of 6 covered wagons and 12 oxen that were given to the Levites to help them in the carrying, in the transportation of the tabernacle. Although Moshe did not want to accept it initially, God says, accept it. And 8 oxen and 4 wagons were given to the family of Merari, that Levite family. They had more heavier loads to carry, so they were given 8 of the 12 oxen and 4 of the 6 wagons. The other 4 oxen and the other 2 wagons were given to the family of Gershom, but no wagons and no oxen were given to the family of Kahas. They carried the sacrosanct ark and sacred vessels, and that must be done manually. You don't outsource that to the ox or to the wagon. They carried it on their shoulder. That was the first tribute that was offered, the first gift that was offered by the princes at the inauguration of the tabernacle. And then there's the 12-day tribute. Each day, another prince of the 12 tribes brought the identical tribute to celebrate the inauguration. And the Parsha has a very long and very elaborate description, and it tells it again and again for every one of the heads of the tribes. In 12 successive days, by the 12 princes of the tribes, each one brought 1 silver bowl weighing 130 shekels, 1 silver basin weighing 70 shekels. And both of them were filled with flour and oil. And then they brought a gold ladle that was laid in with incense. And the gold ladle weighed 10 shekels. And then 1 bull, 1 ram, and 1 lamb for a elevation offering, for an olah. And then 1 goat for a chatas, for a sin offering. And then a peace offering consisting of 2 oxen, 5 rams, 5 male goats, and 5 lambs. And the Parsha tells us, it goes through each one of these tribes individually. On day 1, it was Nachshon, who was the prince of the tribe of Judah, and he brought this. And day 2, the prince of Yisachar and Zvulun, and so on. It's dozens upon dozens of verses. Even though the Torah is typically very circumspect in verses, it seems to be very loquacious and verbose when it comes to the description of the gifts, the tributes of the princes. Now, who are these princes? So Rashi, very interesting, Rashi tells us a whole bunch of interesting anecdotes and factoids about these princes. The first thing Rashi tells us in verse 2 of chapter 7, that they were actually featured in last week's Parsha. They were the ones who joined Moshe and Aaron when Moshe and Aaron counted the nation. So we're now in the second installment, the second Parsha of the book of Bamidbar. Last week, Parshas Bamidbar, we had the census. And Moshe and Aaron did the census, and together with them, the verse tells us, the heads of the 12 tribes, the princes of the 12 tribes, they were there. Now, it's interesting, they didn't actually count. Moshe and Aaron exclusively did the census. But these 12 princes were there. They came for a ride-along. They accompanied Moshe and Aaron as they counted. Chapter 1, verse 4 of our book, Ve'itchem yehiyu, they should be with you. They should be with you, Rashi tells us, when you count the nation, you count the Israelites, the heads of every one of the tribes should be with you. Now, this seems to be a bit unnecessary. What are they doing there? They're just accompanying Moshe and Aaron. What's the point of them just joining for the count, but not actually doing the count themselves? Question number 1. The next interesting thing that Rashi tells us about these 12 tribes is their credentials. They're the Nisiei HaMatos, which means the princes of the tribes. But the word matos, it means tribes, but it also means sticks, like batons or nightsticks or billy clubs. Clubs. These people, their backstory was that they were hit with sticks. Because in Egypt, the Jewish people were tasked with all sorts of labor. They were enslaved. And the Egyptians appointed taskmasters from the Jews to oversee the slaves. And when a Jew did not fulfill their quota, the taskmaster, like a capo in the Holocaust, they would receive blows. They would be beaten with a club, with a mata, with a stick, with a baton, for the failure of the slaves to arrive at their quota, to produce sufficient bricks for the quota. And these people were righteous, and they absorbed blows on behalf of the people. And this is why they were appointed to be the leaders of the tribes. Now, this is a very interesting method of leadership qualification. If you want to lead the people, the question to determine your eligibility is how much pain are you willing to accept on their behalf? We think of leadership in terms of prestige, power, to rule over the people, to be able to influence, to create a legacy. In the eyes of the Torah, your qualification to be a leader is your ability and your willingness to suffer and to bear pain on behalf of your constituents. So these are the princes. And they make an offer. The tabernacle has lots and lots of different parts and pieces and components, as we know. And whenever it's time to move, it has to be disassembled and carried and transported by the Levites, the three families, Gershon, Kohath, and Merari, their children, their descendants. And to carry it, well, it's difficult. We want to give you oxen and wagons to carry the components of the Mishkan, of the tabernacle, when it is in transport. Let's save the people from their back-breaking labor. Let's get them some wagons and oxen. It seems like the pattern of these princes to care about the people and their pain. It seems like it's continuing here. They care about the Levites and their pain. Let's get them some oxen and wagons. Now, Moshe initially refuses to accept it. And the commentaries offer a variety of reasons. Some suggest that Moshe maybe thought that the whole tabernacle ought to be carried manually. It's much more honorable to not outsource it to the oxen and the wagons. Alternatively, maybe this was not commanded. The Almighty gives us very precise instructions. And we don't deviate from what he asks of us, even if we think it might be logical. Now, you recall perhaps that on the first day of the inauguration of the tabernacle, Nadav and Avihu, the two crown jewels, the crown princes of the Jewish people, they brought an unrequested sacrifice and they died. We don't do things without God's approval. He didn't ask for oxen and wagons. We talk about the gold and the silver and the copper and all the different types of wool and all the different fabrics and so on, the wood, the oil, the spices. It didn't mention oxen or wagons. So Moshe didn't want to accept it. And God said to Moshe, accept it. Chapter 7, verse 4 and 5, Kach mi'itam, take it from them, and it will help the Levites in their transportation. And Rashi tells us something also very interesting about these princes and their motivation to bring gifts, because they brought one gift, these oxen and the wagons, and then they brought this second series of gifts, 12 days, 12 tributes from the 12 princes. And Rashi tells us, and we've seen this already in the past, why were they so eager to give towards the inauguration of the tabernacle? And specifically, Rashi contrasts these princes and their attitude towards giving towards the tabernacle's inauguration with their attitude in giving towards the fundraising drive for the building of the tabernacle. You recall perhaps when the materials for the tabernacle were requested, the princes, they tarried, they delayed. They said, let everyone else give. Moshe is asking for gold, for silver, for copper, different types of wool, very expensive materials. Let everyone else give what they give, and we'll cover the balance. We'll give whatever is not covered. But the people gave with the greater generosity than was expected. And there was almost nothing left to give. And they only were able to give the shoham stones and the miluim stones for the ephod and for the choshen. And when that story is told in the book of Exodus, the princes are rebuked by having a letter deducted from their name. These princes, they failed to appreciate the generosity of the people that they were leading, and that was a failure in leadership. And they waited to donate. They're not going to make the mistake again when it comes the time to make an offer, make a gift, make a tribute for the inauguration of the tabernacle. They took initiative. They have one gift, the oxen and the wagons, and then from the 1st through the 12th day of Nisan, each tribal head, each prince brought a lavish tribute, all sorts of sacrifices, the silver basin, the silver bowl, filled with flour and oil, and the gold ladle heaped with incense. Now this is told in the longest chapter in the Torah. It's almost a complete verbatim retelling of 12 identical tributes from the 12 heads of the tribes. And this is apparently the last that we hear of these princes. Later on in our book, we'll read about princes who were scouting the land, the spies who Moshe sent to reconnoiter the land of Canaan. Those are different people. So what's the epilogue to the story of these 12 princes, the ones who joined Moshe and Aaron for the counting of the people, the ones who brought these 12 lavish tributes? In the Midrash, we find something very surprising, very unusual. In a couple of weeks, we'll read about the rebellion of Korach. Korach is Moshe's first cousin, and he's a very clever person, and he's very talented, and he launches this terrible insurrection. He says, Moshe, you're not legitimate. Aaron, you're not legitimate. The whole nation is holy. Why do you think you're better than us? And he gets some collaborators, some co-conspirators. He has Dasan and Abiram, Dathan and Abiram. You remember those two malcontents? He has a guy named On ben Pelas. And 250 leaders, men of distinction. Who are these people? We don't know their names. The Torah does not identify the names of the 250 people who joined Korach and his rebellion. But the Midrash tells us, if you compare chapter 16, verse 2 of Bamidbar with chapter 1, verse 16 of Bamidbar, you find a similar terminology that's applied to the leaders who joined Korach's rebellion and the leaders who counted or who joined Moshe for the counting and who brought the tributes for the 12 days of inauguration. Who were these people? These 250 people? We don't know, but we do know that 12 of them are these same 12 people. Now, this is very surprising because these 12 people are heroes. They were beaten on behalf of the Jewish people, and they were appointed princes. And yes, maybe they tarried in giving the offering for the fundraising effort of the tabernacle. But they are lauded. They come and make an offering of the oxen and the wagons, and that's accepted, and make another offering, 12 days of tributes. These are special people, leaders of the nation. But unfortunately, we read about this twist, this unexpected twist in their story. They joined Korach's rebellion, and they died. Korach's rebellion, everyone with the exception of On ben Pelas, died. Some died in a sinkhole, some died in a plague, some were consumed by a fire that came from heaven. And we're told in the Midrash that the princes of our Parsha, the princes who were so generous in saying we'll cover whatever the nation doesn't cover, the princes who had a magnanimity in accepting blows on behalf of the nation, the leaders, the princes who brought the offerings of the oxen and the wagons, who donated that to the Levites, who brought the elaborate tributes for 12 days of inauguration of the tabernacle, they joined Korach's rebellion, and they died. What's going on over here? What do we make of the very unusual storyline of these 12 men? What is the connective tissue, the continuity in their story? What's the through line that threads all the changes in their lives? Beaten by the Egyptians to spare their brethren. Wait until everyone gives for the fundraising of the tabernacle. We'll cover whatever is not donated. There's only the Miluim stones and the Shoam stones are left. Jump ahead and sponsor the wagons and the oxen. Bring the second tribute. Moshe and Aaron are going to do the census. Join them. Stand by while Aaron and Moshe count the people. And somehow join the rebellion of Korach, and die in infamy. What is going on over here? So I want to suggest an approach that explains all the different parts of their story, every beat of their story, how every development perhaps led to the next one, all the twists and turns in the story of these 12 princes. In Egypt, these people were officers. And when the slaves, the Jewish slaves, the Israelite slaves, they did not fulfill their quota, these people were given a choice to allow the poor, enslaved Israelites to suffer, or to absorb the blows themselves. And these princes were men of stature, were men of distinction, were righteous, and were righteous by the definition of the Torah. They were willing to suffer in order to spare others from pain. They were willing to absorb the arrows in their own back to save their constituents. And that's why they were appointed as princes of the tribe. They were benevolent. They were kindly. They were special people. They had immense strength of character, immense personal fortitude, immense love of one's fellow. These are special people, worthy of leadership. And then the nation has the Exodus, and of course Mount Sinai revelation. Moshe comes down, smashes the tablets, goes up a second time, goes up a third time, comes down to Yom Kippur with the second tablets. The next day, the day after Yom Kippur, it's a few days, less than a half a year after the Exodus, Moshe makes a fundraising drive. Gold and silver and copper and all sorts of expensive wool and leather and gems. We need this for a tabernacle. And the princes make a terrible miscalculation. They don't jump to give. Not because they don't want to give, but because they mistakenly assume that the Israelites will not be generous, will not be forthcoming in responding to Moshe's call. So they say, we'll cover whatever's not donated. These princes have a low opinion of their constituents. They do not believe that the nation would enthusiastically respond to Moshe's request. There's no way. There's no way, the princes say, that these poor, recently released slaves, they're going to be so generous. There will surely be so much that won't be donated. We'll cover that. Why do the princes so thoroughly underestimate the people that they're leading? I think it shows us maybe the danger of helping the downtrodden. Let me explain what I mean. These princes, they were the patrons of the Jews. They saw them as downtrodden slaves, and they had pity on them, and they absorbed the blows on their behalf. And it's precisely because of their heroism that they underestimated the people. They were the benefactors, the big brothers who failed to recognize the great qualities of the ordinary people. They had an overabundance of pity for the weak, for the downtrodden, for the needy, and they viewed those people that they were helping as needy, as downtrodden, as weak, as pathetic. And they failed to see their great potential. They failed to see their great power as descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. You have pity on those who are pathetic and incapable of helping themselves. They'll forever be on the government dime. They'll forever be dependent on the benevolence of others. They'll forever be reliant on the generosity, on the magnanimity, on the benevolence of others. This is the great danger of righteous benevolence. It can lead a person to view the people you're helping as being helpless, incapable of getting out of their plight, incapable of ever escaping their miserable state. There was a certain haughtiness that came with the princes' magnanimity. They wanted to help. But an outgrowth of that was some hubris. Who are we helping? People who are lesser than us. People who are weak and feeble and impotent. We're helping those who cannot help themselves. And in the eyes of the princes, the masses, this whole nation, were cast in a negative light. And now Moshe makes a request. We need millions, billions of dollars of donations. And the princes look around and they say, it's not going to happen. These poor chaps will leave us loads of opportunity to donate. We'll cover whatever does not get donated. And they are harshly rebuked for their decision, not because they weren't generous. I pointed out many years ago in the Parsha podcast that a letter is reduced from their name, but the verse says, V'hanisim, and the princes, Heviu, they brought. And the letter Yud from the word V'hanisim and the princes is not present. But I once asked the question, well, maybe there's something wrong with their donation, and therefore the word that says they brought, they gave, they contributed, Heviu, that's the word that should lose the letter. But no, what they brought, their donation, their generosity, that was not flawed. It was their leadership, V'hanisim, the princes. There's something wrong with their leadership. The letter is deducted from the word that means princes, because they failed to display true leadership. True leadership is not just to help the underprivileged. Let me have pity on those poor, pathetic, downtrodden people. True leadership is to help everyone, but certainly not to view the people you're helping as being helpless, to see their beauty and greatness and latent potential, and to envision the possibility that these poor, pathetic, downtrodden slaves could become members of a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. God rebukes them in a gentle, subtle way. He doesn't fire them. Is this a fireable offense? You fail to see the greatness of the people you're leading, of your charges? God doesn't fire them. He doesn't revoke their status as princes. He takes away a letter. It's maybe a gentle jab in the ribs. Will they get the message? On the first day of Nisan, the first day of the inauguration of the tabernacle, they donate the oxen and the wagons to aid the Levites in their transportation. This seems to be a reframing of their helping of others. They're not only helping the poor, the downtrodden, the underprivileged, the poor, the tired, the huddled masses. They're helping the Levites. No one would say the Levites are not glorious, elevated people. They're not viewing themselves as, we'll be a benefactor for the needy, for the helpless. The princes are beginning to rehabilitate themselves. Their gift of 6 wagons and 12 oxen are accepted, and they proceed with more generosity, and they each donate all these animals as sacrifices, silver bowl and basin and the gold ladle. And thus from the beginning of Nisan, the first day of Nisan, for 12 days, each one of these princes, these tribal heads, is bringing a sacrifice, bringing an offering, a tribute that's accepted. Now, although this is told in our Parsha, and the census of last week's Parsha, well, that's in the past. In actuality, the chronological order is reversed. Because the first day of Nisan, that's the day of the inauguration, and the census only happened 30 days later on the first day of Iyar, so the first day of the second month. We know the Torah is not necessarily in chronological order. On the first day of Iyar, the second month, Moshe and Aaron are told to count the people. A national census. V'itchem yehiyu, and people should be there with you, the princes. They should be there with you. Moshe and Aaron are doing the count. The princes are just there to witness. What's happening by the count? As we mentioned last week, the count, it's not just a simple census. This is the uplifting of the people, giving prominence and prestige to each individual. Moshe and Aaron, they meet every individual, and they get to know their name and inquire about their family, and they speak to each individual, and they bless each individual. They see each Israelite as a person of stature, not as downtrodden slaves, but as the nation of God, as members of the kingdom of priests and the holy nation. As we mentioned last week, each person, each soul, corresponds to a letter in the Torah. And thus each soul is indispensable, without which our nation is doomed. Each one is a diamond. Each one is precious. Each one is something cherished, invaluable. And who's there? The princes are there, not to do anything, just to be there. Because this is an opportunity to transform their perspective. They may have had an attitude towards the people as being, masses of recently released slaves. Now they're witnessing all those people, all those former slaves being uplifted. God tells Moshe, take the princes for a ride along. They should join the counting. They should witness the counting. They should see firsthand the true greatness of the people they may have grossly underestimated. And the princes, they're there and they learn. And they cease to see the people as suffering slaves in need of patronage. They see each individual as something cherished, something uplifted. Each one of them is a portrait of nobility, a son or a daughter of Abram, Isaac, and Jacob. The princes are on their way to becoming real great leaders who see the greatness of each one of their constituents. But unfortunately, it goes wrong. They join the Korach rebellion. Korach says to Moshe and Aaron, "You're not legitimate. You're redundant. The whole nation is holy. Why are you superior? Why do you claim superiority over the rest of the nation? Why do you lord over the people?" And unfortunately, these 12 princes join Korach's rebellion. They started off as people who pitied the masses. And I'm willing to suffer on their behalf, they said. Because these are people that need a benefactor, and they can't do it without me. As a result of that, they underestimated the masses. And they were trained to see the value and the greatness of every individual. But they overcompensated. They swung too far. They went to the opposite extreme. They began to sympathize with Korach's rebellion. Moshe and Aaron, who needs them? Every single Jew is a gem. Every single one of them is a diamond. Every single one of them is elevated and uplifted. A kingdom of priests. Who needs a leader? A holy nation. Who needs Moshe? Who needs Aaron? And that was a fatal blunder. And these 12 heroes, unfortunately, they died in the aftermath of Korach's rebellion. Kindness and benevolence are some of the greatest qualities that we can aspire to. Moshe, he was like a parent to every Jew. He cared about every Jew. He suffered on behalf of every individual. His story begins with him empathizing with his brethren. That is the basis of Moshe's greatness. In Parsha's Pinchas, we read about Moshe seeking a successor. And what qualities does he seek in his successor? A person that can bear the pain of every single individual, notwithstanding every individual's unique eccentricities. That is the definition of greatness. But there is a risk. There's a risk in being benevolent and magnanimous. It can lead a person to have a lower opinion of the people that they're helping. It can make them hubristic. I'm better than you. Look, you need my help. I can help you because I'm better than you. It can lead a person to look down upon the poor, pathetic people that they're helping. And that's a terrible mistake. And when the princes failed to recognize the incredible generosity of the masses, the Torah scratches off a letter of their name. There's a problem in your leadership, in your greatness. Sometimes the pity that you showed on behalf of the nation, it caused you not to value the people that you're helping. And the trick is to help other people, to love them, to care for them, to empathize with them, to suffer on their behalf, but to still recognize their greatness and to still recognize their potential for extraordinary things. It may be easy to see someone who is pitiful and in desperate need. The princes, they begin their reformation by helping everyone, even those who they don't view as pitiful, even the Levites. And Moshe and Aaron take the princes for a ride-along. And they learn that the nation is not just a mass jumble of slaves. They are individuals, each one with an indispensable value, each one with a purpose, with a name, with a family, with a history, with aspirations, with a bright destiny, with a bright future. Each one is cherished. Unfortunately, the princes took it too far. They began to view the people as being so valuable, so special, they got to the point where they began to question who needs Moshe and Aaron. The individualism went too far, and they forgot our need to have great leaders. This is a cautionary tale. We want to perfect ourselves. We want to elevate ourselves, to refine ourselves. And there's a lot of different ways that can go wrong. And one of the ways is when you spot a flaw, you overcorrect. You think about the Nazir. On one hand, the Nazir is praised. He's a holy person. Look at his asceticism. On the other hand, he's forced to bring a sin sacrifice for his asceticism. He caused himself pain. The quest of self-improvement is a potentially perilous venture. The golden middle is sometimes a hard road to find. Let's get to this week's dilemma, the dilemma of the week. It's year 9 of the Parsha podcast. The theme of this year is Torah is your ID, an idea, a very powerful idea, very deep idea, and now a dilemma. How do you find and develop and accentuate your individuality when the Torah instructs you, guides you, directs you to do a very clear, prescribed set of activities, of behaviors? How do you find your own path? How do you find your own individuality when you look around and you see it seems like everyone's doing the same thing that you're doing? This is an important question to know the answer to. And the answer is really found in our Parsha. We have 12 princes, and they brought identical tributes. We went through the tributes already. A whole variety of different sacrifices, an ola offering, shlamim, chatas, different types of offerings, gold ladle with incense, silver basin, silver bowl, and so on. It's identical. 12 times we're told, again and again, the different animals, the basin, the bowl, the ladle, the incense, the flour, the oil, again and again and again and again. And the message, the commentaries tell us, they all did the exact same thing, but each one was unique. Each one was an individual. Each one did it not because they're just copying the masses. Each one was devoted and motivated towards it as if they were the only one doing it. If these 12 princes did the exact same thing, the Torah would not repeat it individually. It would say that all 12 brought this tribute. From the fact that it repeats the exact same tribute 12 times, it must be that these are 12 different things. On the surface, sure, it looks the same. But the commentaries tell us each one, and there's a lot of literature on this, maybe one year we'll do this, each one of the princes had a completely different motivation for why he brought the silver basin, the silver bowl, brimming with flour and oil, the gold ladle, 21 different animals and sacrifices. Each one had a different reason for it. And that shows us that it's possible, and in fact, it's encouraged for each person, even though, notwithstanding the fact that you might be doing the exact same thing externally as others, you wear tefillin, I wear tefillin, it looks the same. You eat kosher, I eat kosher. Laws of Shabbos, it's universal for the whole nation. The mezuzah, you open up mine, it says the same as your mezuzah. Hopefully, if not, if there's a difference, we got a problem. Where is the individuality? The answer is that the true definition of a person's mitzvah, a person's deed, a person's act, is what's happening in their heart. And thus, 12 people bring the identical offerings, and the Torah spells out, no, these are 12 different things. Because each one found their own pathway, their own direction, and their own meaning, and their own motivation for these tributes. This is, of course, true by the gifts, by the offerings of the princes, but it's true for us as well. Prayer, we're told, it's avoda shebalev. It is service of the heart. I look at my Siddur, my prayer book, your prayer book, it's the same. If I have the great privilege of davening, of praying next to my son, sometimes the younger kids, they don't know exactly where to find the prayer. So you look at what page number it is. Oh, I'm on page 290. You have the same volume. You'll find the proper, you'll find the place at page 290. So is all prayer the same? We're saying the same exact text? We're just parroting over the same message? No, there's the service is in the heart, not in the lips. The Almighty wants our heart. And what's in my heart, and what's in your heart, it's completely unique. And we, of course, tend to over-index on what we could see, what we could quantify, what we can measure, what interacts with us on a sensory level. But in the eyes of the Torah, these 12, identical to us, are completely different. And thus, there is no redundancy in repeating it one after another for 12 days. So many extra words that are not unnecessary, are not redundant. We have concluded this week's Parsha podcast. It was a little bit different than previous weeks because it's just me in the studio here. I'm looking at the microphone on my desk, and that's it. But I kind of enjoyed it. It was like a callback, a flashback to simpler times, to different times. But next week, please, God, we'll go back to torchzoom.com, 8 p.m. Central Tuesdays. I'll be very excited to not have to do this again. I was slightly apprehensive about it. It's a very different vibe here, but I hope it was still good. Let me know. My email address is rabbiwolbe@gmail.com. You have a wonderful rest of your day. A splendid, wonderful, delightful rest of your week. A sensational, terrific, and uplifting Shabbos upcoming. And please, God, with the help of the Almighty, we'll talk again next week.